Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Greetings from Riga, Latvia. Welcome to the third webinar in the series Fostering Peaceful and Resilient Communities through Museums and Libraries. And this series of webinars is organized by the Latvian Museum Association, Latvian Librarian Association, and the Latvian National Commission for UNESCO, and supported by the UNESCO Participation Program. These webinars are exploring ideas and approaches for strengthening communities in challenging times. And they draw on the methodology of the guide, Localizing SDGs through Museums and Libraries, that was developed by Henry McGee, also present in this webinar, in 2023. It was a previous part of the same project, involving museums and library associations from Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Moldova, Georgia, and this partnership was joined by Ukraine in 2024. What unites us all of these museums and libraries, is the intention to work strategically and professionally with the Sustainable Development Goals, to learn to make them meaningful and locally relevant for our communities. In the beginning of this partnership that started in 2020, we were exploring all the 17 of the Sustainable Development Goals, but lately, since 2024, being aware of the current situation in our region, we decided to focus on peace, on the peace dimension in sustainable development. And as Henry highlighted in the first webinar, there is no sustainable development without peace. So in the first two webinars, we were exploring what peace means in the framework of Agenda 2030. And today we are looking into practical examples and case studies about peace building through museums and libraries. This webinar will be moderated by Diana Walters. Diana works as facilitator, researcher, prison chaplain, and activist for peace and social justice. Based in UK, Diana has over 35 years of experience in heritage and peace building, and she has worked in over 20 countries. And today we have two guest speakers that Diana has invited. We're very grateful to have Munuve Noticia from Kenya and Justine Abisad from Lebanon. And Diana will introduce both of the speakers shortly. Just before passing the floor to Diana, I would like to invite you to leave your comments, thoughts, questions in the chat, and we will pick them up for the Q&A at the end of the session. And now, hello, Diana, and the screen is yours.
Good morning, Inga. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are and whatever time you are joining this webinar. It's wonderful that you're here, and thank you so much for being part of this really important discussion. So what we're going to do today is we're going to, as Inga said, we're going to move into looking at some practice examples. And I'm absolutely thrilled that our two guests who are joining us this morning have managed to come here. So far, the logistics are working, but can we please just be very patient, because Manuve is joining us from Kenya and Justine is joining us from Lebanon. And with the current state of things, we never quite know how the connections are going to hold. So please bear with us if the quality of the sound is not perhaps exactly as you would expect it to be. Thank you so much for your understanding on that. So I'm going to go first and directly into introducing Manuve, who will be our first speaker. Manuve Mutisia is the director of the Community Peace Museums and Heritage Foundation in Kenya. He's also the founder of the Akamba Community Peace Museum in Machakos County in Kenya, which is where he lives. Manuve is a cultural expert, a historian, a museum curator, a facilitator. He's a project manager with many, many years of experience of working with peace building at community level through museums and artifacts and material culture and culture generally. And he particularly has a long expertise in working with peace building initiatives with marginalized communities. The Community Peace Museums and Heritage Foundation, Manuve will explain more about this when he speaks, but the aim of it is to strengthen cultural foundations that commemorate memories of living without violence in amongst East African attitudes. And this is very, very much rooted in the heritage and the indigenous humanistic philosophy of Utu. In 2020, Minuve was recognized nationally in his country as being, and he received a National Hero Presidential Decree for his work as a peace ambassador within Kenya and promoting social cohesion within the country. Minuve, it is a real pleasure to welcome you to our webinar, and we're so looking forward to hearing you talk about some of the initiatives that you have been working with in Kenya that help us move towards a non-violent society. Welcome.
So thank you so much to everyone. Another Mutisia is here in Kenya. And can you see my presentation, everyone?
Yes. Yes, we can, Minuve, but it's quite difficult to hear you still. So if you could come quite close to the microphone, I know it's awkward, but thank you.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Loud enough? Right. Thank you so much. So coming from Kenya, I'm going to make a presentation on project, giving an example about the project that is borrowing based on the example from the Sustainable Goal number 16. As this, here I'm going to use the Journeys of Peace project, which we did in 2013, 2014 by the Community Museum Heritage Foundation in Kenya as my case study.
Minuve, I'm going to stop you there. We are having real difficulty hearing. Can I suggest that you turn your camera off? Sometimes that helps with the streaming quality of the sound. If you take your camera off,
Okay.
can I so we don't see your, sadly, we won't see your face, but if you just, can you turn off your camera?
Yeah, I'm doing the
Let's try, let's see if that makes a difference.
Does that make any difference?
We'll try, let's try.
Yeah. All right. So I'm talking about the Community Peace Museums Heritage Foundation. Lost. Okay, so I'm talking about the overview of the Sustainable Goal number 16. So United Nations, they have the global goal, so that I can talk about my project, which focuses on promoting peaceful and inclusive societies, providing access to justice for all, and building effective and accountable and inclusive institutions at all levels. It aims to reduce violence, strengthen the rule of law, and fight corruption, ensure human rights, and promote restorative governance. The Community Peace Museum Heritage Foundation was founded in 1994 by a Kenyan ethnographer, Dr. Sultan Sonke, with a view of helping to retain and promote and sustain values in areas and communities in Kenya that were affected by conflict and famine. Dr. Sultan Sonke has written a book, One Who Dreams is Not a Prophet, about the community. The aim of the Community Museums is to add from Diana is to explore the values of peace embedded in visual and oral traditions of Kenyan cultures, and also to see cultural heritage as a resource for conflict resolution for sustainable development. The methodology of the Community Peace Museum Heritage Foundation is based on the African traditional grassroots people-to-people approach, and also community-based peace museums, which collect material culture associated with peace, and they also do reconciliation transitions. But also we do contemporary approaches, heritage as active force for upholding democracy and human rights. We have a long list of community peace museums in our network. So we have about 17 peace museums working for peace through intercultural dialogue. And then we have a young one that now has been born in Southern Sudan, the Child Soldier Museum in Southern Sudan, but also the network again.
Manuve, I'm so sorry. I do apologize for this. I'm going to have to jump in, I'm afraid. I don't, obviously, there's nothing we can do about this, but I'm afraid we're having real difficulties hearing you. Can I make a suggestion? I know that you and I worked together on the project that you're going to talk about. I wonder, would you mind if I asked you, if we go through the presentation, which I have seen, and if I can just ask you a few questions and perhaps bring some things out from the project that might help us to place the work within the context of peace building. Would that be okay, Manuve?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so I'll jump in and just I do apologize, everybody, but we are live this morning, and we are having a live link to Kenya. So these things happen, I'm afraid. So what Manuve has been explaining so far is the background to the Community Peace Museums and Heritage Foundation, and the fact that it's very, very much rooted in very traditional indigenous East African and African peace building approaches, which is very much about bottom up. It's grassroots, it's community based, and it's also it centers around using material culture and also an intangible culture, stories, songs, myths, legends, artifacts that have a long association with peace and reconciliation, but to use them in a contemporary context, using them in Kenya today. So in other words, turning heritage into an agency, into an agent for peace building, into an active participant for democracy and for human rights. Now, the Community Peace Museums and Heritage Foundation is a whole network of museums across Kenya. And it also now exists in Uganda, so it's extended over to neighbouring countries too. And it's very much rooted in the work of Sultan Somji, who was a cultural anthropologist, and he was the person who really began the tradition of working in this way. Could you move on to the next slide, Manuve, please? So the project I know Manuve is going to talk to us about, and we will do our best to have a conversation about it, given the technical challenges, was a project that took place in 2013 and 2014. And it was called Journeys of Peace. And it was basically the idea of it was very simple. It was a traveling exhibition project that was based on peace cultures. So the idea was to collect different peace cultures from around the country of Kenya and to really share them across different communities, to take them around different communities, to travel around the country, to really see if there was a possibility to find connections and to build community in that way. And as you can see on the screen, the project was done in partnership with the Creative Force programme, which was run by the Swedish Institute at that time. Shall we move on? So, Manuve, here we have some examples, don't we, of the travelling exhibition itself. Could you just tell us a little bit, how did you decide what to put on these different exhibition boards?
There was a time we visited different ethnic peace museums in different parts of Kenya, documenting the material culture in the museums, and then we were trying to identify the material culture that is related to indigenous peacemaking ceremonies that we have. So that's
So
how
you went round to all the different museums, you collected all the different traditions and ideas around the artifacts that were used and so on, and the different stories behind those, and related that very much to active peace building within communities. That's how that lovely, thank you. That's how the content came together. Let's move on to the next picture. So here we have outlined very clearly the vision of this particular project. And the vision was to empower and transform communities through the use of cultural heritage in the realization and respect of human rights, peaceful coexistence, and sustainable human development. We can see really clearly how these speak to the SDG, to SDG 16, and we can really see how this is a very, very open dialogue with the aspirations and the structures and hopes of the Sustainable Development Goals, really bringing together and understanding that peaceful coexistence or non-violent societies have to be rooted within sustainability. They have to be rooted within human rights. You know, these things cannot exist in isolation. They must coexist together. Shall we move on? So here we have, I think, this is obviously one of your sessions when the exhibition was traveling around. This is with children, I think, isn't it, Manuve? Can you tell us a little about this?
This is
Okay, we seem to have lost you completely now. So I will explain as because actually I was involved in this project. So fortunately, I am able to to bring some knowledge and some insight into the project. But we can see here that what the Community Peace Museums did was that they really took the exhibition on the road. They took it out to communities all over the country. They took it outside so that it was very, very literally a grassroots project. Working in this particular case with young people, or on this slide, we have elders in the community, and also we had practical sessions. We had people coming together to really understand and explore and discuss, well, okay, what is it that we're looking at here? What do these symbols really mean to us? And how might that be relevant to how we can actually work with peace building today? So we had all kinds of communities, and we absolutely mixed as well the demographic up so that there was conversations between elders and young people, women and men, all kinds of different communities that the exhibition went to. And the mission of this was to very much to promote cultural heritage, or use cultural heritage to promote peaceful coexistence, respect for human rights, and sustainable development. So this was exactly what this project was aiming to do. Some more photographs here, and we'll try and hear from you again, Manuve. Let's try your sound again and see if we can hear you.
all right. So here we have when the traveling exhibition visited areas like the Pokot and the Samburu, which is a highly risky area in Kenya, we were able to host the exhibition for the community, but vision of the security demonstration where they are sitting on standby in case anything happens. So this was very risky, but able to hold a community dialogue with the elders, but also provide an opportunity for the people to see the traveling exhibition.
Okay, I'm going to jump in there because it is still quite hard to hear you. I'm so sorry about this. But what Manuve is talking about here is that the exhibition was extremely courageous. It went to some areas of Kenya that are considered to be, particularly at the time of the exhibition, but still there is tension that exists within these areas of Kenya. And this is the Pokot region. And this was a particularly challenging and difficult area to go into. But the exhibition was deliberately courageous in terms of moving in and wanting to connect with communities that, for many reasons, political, historical, cultural, were, as it were, not at war exactly, but certainly not at peace with their neighbours. Often in Kenya, this can be over issues such as access to water and access to different types of land. So it was a very deliberate goal to go to these communities. And again, just reminding ourselves of the objectives, how this worked was that the exhibition wanted to demonstrate, well, there are connections, even though we have these differences between us, even though we have these difficulties, there are connections between us. We do have a shared heritage. We can discuss different ways of working towards a better society for everybody. And it's really important that that we understand that this is a deep heritage within Kenya. It's in the DNA of that country that the Ubuntu and Utu philosophies are as old as the land itself, and that this kind of peaceful coexistence has existed for generations and generations. Arguably, it is in fact, the intervention of colonialism and the intervention of external forces that created, or certainly fed, division and created differences between communities. So as well as being just an exhibition, by turning up and visiting these remoter communities, there was also a very deliberate attempt to create spaces for dialogue. And those spaces were often outside. They were generally outside. They were generally located within the community, on the land, in the farming areas, and so on and so forth. And there was a general sort of sense of just come and see, because it was novel, it was interesting, it was new to have this kind of exhibition visiting some very, very quite, remote areas of Kenya. Let's move on. I'm sure we have some more things to see. So how does this all relate really to the social development, sustainable development goals? And this was very much one of the first goals of this project. One of the main outcomes of this project was to reduce violence, which directly speaks to SDG 16. How? By ensuring that there was a place, conditions for coming together and listening. And cultural heritage, the artifacts, created that container. They created that safety of a shared heritage with differences, with nuances, with different stories, but they created that container and that space, and people came into that space knowing that it was held in a safe way. And here we have again one of the most important events that happened as a result of the Journeys of Peace exhibition, which was a meeting between two communities that for years had been fighting over water and grazing land. There was a lack of water. There was a shortage of good land for grazing. Cattle are gold in this part of Kenya. They really are the wealth of the community. And it was possible, using the exhibition, to bring the chiefs and the elders of these two communities, the Pokot and the Tugen communities, together to actually say, okay, we both live here, we both are on this land, we both have the same needs in terms of seeking peace, needing to look after our livestock and so on. How can we, or can we, move forward with a greater level of understanding? And it was an extraordinary experience. Another way that the exhibition speaks to the SDGs was through inclusive and participatory decision making. What the exhibition did was it created energy and interest and enthusiasm. People saw the difference, they felt the difference that just a little travelling exhibition could make to communities that were tense or that were divided. And inspired by this, people took the initiative forward. They decided it's like, it can't end here. We don't want it to be just an exhibition. So let's start by forming peace clubs for children, peace clubs in schools, peace clubs amongst women. Marginalized voices were invited into those discussions and were welcomed in, and so on. So you had this sense of a life force. The exhibition really was a spark. And here we have again more pictures of people who, from communities that would generally be fighting. The difference here is that where people are turning up with sticks and with canes, they would previously have been turning up with guns. Any of you who know Isaiah, the Old Testament book of Isaiah, will know that there's that wonderful phrase about turning guns into plowshares. And I have to admit that that image to me always takes me to that particular moment in Kenya. Another thing that this did was accountable institutions. It made those institutions, the museums, the libraries, the cultural artifacts, it made them accountable to and belong to the communities. So they became living in terms of like what happened actually was that as a result of the Journeys of Peace exhibition, people came forward from the community and said, would you like this? There is a story behind this artifact. I don't want to give it to the National Museum. I don't want to give it I want to give it to you because you're in the community. You represent me. So the museums themselves became richer as a result. And here we have a picture. Again, you can see an elder, one of the curators of one of the museums, really explaining to young children, to children in Kenya, what are these symbols? What are these artifacts? They're real, they're living. We use them today. So we can see that the children are handling the objects, talking about them, learning about them, but also understanding that they still have power and they still have value. So if you have, for example, beads, the beads all represent something, they tell a story, they capture something from the community. A stick on the ground that's laid down by a particular person in the community is a signal, don't cross. Don't fight. The artifacts are full of meaning. So the exhibition was really, really well received, and it reached some of the most difficult parts, some of the most marginalized and dangerous parts of Kenya. So what we did in terms of the impact of this was that we're sharing cultural and historical information and also going to really difficult issues like shortages of water and grazing and so on, issues that NGOs and governments had not been able to solve, had not been able to talk about. And it's inspired lots of creative activity. So these pictures, I hope, illustrate that to some extent. And here we can see that there were times when we needed to have the police and we needed to have the soldiers. We needed to have protection for the colleagues who were traveling into some of the more remote or more dangerous parts of the country. But that people sat and listened and worked together in a way that was really quite powerful. And you can see again in this picture that there are sticks and not guns, which was a massive breakthrough for the project. So if we could move on, Manuve, to some of the conclusions, some of the challenges, hopefully we can ask Manuve perhaps to share this in the chat, or we can find a way for his voice to come through on this, because there were challenges, of course there were. There were very much issues of marginalisation. Some marginalised communities really have, long histories and legacies of distrust. And it was very difficult. It was very delicate and fragile to work with, to reach out and to empower and to include. But because the exhibition was so interactive, this was really done to some quite considerable degree of success. There was, of course, some nervousness about moving into difficult subjects. That is most definitely a challenge. Some people were just genuinely very nervous about talking about those things. Let's move on. So what lessons were learned? Well, absolutely the power of cultural heritage in peace building, the power of artifacts, the power of history, the power of stories, the power of myth, the power of arts and crafts, and how important intergenerational dialogue is. The knowledge and the wisdom of the elders, and the questions and the enthusiasm and the technology savviness of the youngsters coming together in this wonderful combination, this really creative combination. It was really important that women particularly were given a huge voice in this, that their role in peace building, which is central in terms of the heritage of these areas, really came through, as did other marginalised groups. And it showed that museums are not just places for exhibitions. They are genuinely hubs for reconciliation, for education, for social justice awareness, for raising issues, for bringing people together and moving into some of those more difficult spaces. So there were some amazing outcomes. So what do we recommend as a result of this? Well, it's really important where you've got community museums or libraries or cultural institutions, they have a direct connection with the grassroots. They really are important. They belong to the community, to try and ensure that what is being discovered and explored feeds into the curriculum, feeds into schools, maybe through peace clubs, maybe through peace education, and have more platforms for this kind of exchange. It's really important also to capture these small shifts and these small changes, because they do have incredible significance. Coming together to talk about water in northern Kenya was an extremely, some people could not believe that it happened. It was described as a miracle by many people who were involved. And just policy as well, feeding into local policies, feeding into the role of heritage, the power of heritage, museums, libraries, culture generally. Yes, there is a role for them to play. They're active participants. So in conclusion, what Manuve and the CPMFA's work really showed is that when we're thinking about peace building and we're thinking about the SDG, it's foundational and it's absolutely essential. You cannot have peace or move towards non-violent societies without this being linked to sustainable development. They absolutely are completely intertwined. And this project, this tiny project, which cost very little to do, incidentally, really shows the power of how this can be done. It shows what can be achieved, I think, when you've got the right message going out into the community. Manuve, if we could stop the presentation there so that we don't move into the next one, if we could just stop sharing. Manuve, I'm so sorry. I do hope that I've managed to represent the project. Let's try and hear from you. Is it possible that that we can hear from you in terms of, have I missed anything or did I get anything hopelessly wrong in that?
Sorry about the voice. I don't know why it's not coming through, but you almost explained everything. The only thing that I can add is, the community museums, some young women were not allowed to go to the meetings. So at some point, when you see some community members, elders, because most of the communities in Kenya are patriarchal. So the role of the woman is silenced. So if a woman is not allowed to come to a meeting, they have to go and stay outside the meeting and talk far away from there. But during this time, when we had these meetings, the women had the opportunity to come and present their issues directly in front of everyone. Although the meetings were guarded with a lot of security and there was a lot of suspicion, it provided an opportunity for the voices that are not usually heard to speak for themselves.
So thank you so much for highlighting that. I think that's a really powerful point, and that, of course, that speaks to some of the other SDGs in terms of empowering women and girls and voices on the margins. Just in case you didn't catch it, what Manuve was saying was that one of the most powerful things that came about as a result of this particular initiative was that, whereas previously the tradition had been that women and girls were not allowed to come into the discussions, that the discussions within the museums were held just amongst men and boys, that actually shifted directly as a result of this exhibition and this particular project. That's massive. That is absolutely massive in terms of taking away a huge barrier and creating a completely different opportunity for women's and girls' voices and their role in moving towards non-violent societies to really take center stage. And I think that that's one of the things about this project, is that it was a little project, but it made a massive impact in so many ways. So thank you, Manuve. Thank you so much for highlighting those things. We heard a little bit better at that point, so we're not going to give up in terms of making sure that we can have your voice as in terms of some questions. But for the moment, thank you so much for providing us with that insight and information. And I hope I did you justice. Please do write anything you want to in terms of the anything you want to add. You can always write it in the chat, in the feed, and we will be able to make sure that we pick those points up. Okay, thank you. I'm with a slight trepidation because I definitely can't take over Justine's presentation, because she is a phenomenon all of herself, but it gives me huge pleasure to move on to introduce you to Justine Abissad. She is a program advisor for civil peace programs at GIZ ZFD in Lebanon. So she is talking us today from Beirut. And she manages and deals with different partners working on different projects in Lebanon, on local conflicts, as well as more international conflicts, for example, between Palestinian and Syrian refugees. Justine is a very experienced trainer and facilitator on peace building and conflict transformation. She works nationally and internationally. She represents the Salto Youth in Euromed, She's been working with them for well over a decade, using different intercultural topics and so on, to strengthen moving towards non-violent societies. She's also a certified mediator. She really does know her stuff when it comes to peace building, and she uses theory and different practices to really strengthen peace building techniques. She's worked all over the world, amazing person, and she's also created some tools which she will share with us, and some approaches that she will share with us about minority rights and conflict transformation. And I'm going to let Justine talk us through her work. Justine, it's wonderful for you to be here. Fingers crossed that we can hear you okay, and welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Diana, for the introduction, and really for having me as host here in order to share my experience, at least. And honestly, working with you in Morocco was also a brightened experience, because I think this what I believe the start of peace building, when we start to build connection and spread this experience all over the world, and at least to learn from each other. So thank you for this. I will share my presentation. And here you go. So definitely here it's the perspective. Maybe you heard a lot about Lebanon, specifically recently, after what's all happening. So definitely when we are talking about peace building in Lebanon, unfortunately for many, is the absence of war. And definitely peace building, it's not only the absence of war, but definitely when a country is always built in a war, and it's an ongoing conflicts and war. So how we are trying to strengthening these communities with sustainable peace, as I think Henry mentioned, that we cannot have sustainable development without peace. So what we are going to talk about, definitely a bit of background on Lebanon challenges, because I bet you heard, but not the specific context of Lebanon. What is peace building in Lebanon? Because even if it's worldwide a known definition, but definitely when it comes to peace, each one of us has its own definition. The non-violence strategy, because I think it's also a huge part when we are talking about peace building, and the approach that we are using, the participatory approach, because I think it's the main reason for successful projects and engagement, and definitely some examples and impacts when it comes to Lebanese communities, and the key lessons from all this experience that we have shared. So definitely you may stop whenever you want, because I know I'm so into it. So feel free to stop me, and if something it's not clear, go ahead and ask as much as question you want to. And then definitely I do believe sometimes when we are talking about peace building, the way forward, not to be stuck in all the challenges, but from those challenges, how we can find opportunities. So the context of Lebanon challenges in itself. So really, if you heard about Lebanon, definitely along with Lebanon, it comes the historical background. So never Lebanon was an independent country. So it's always was governed first by the Turkish, then the French. Then we thought that we have our independency, then the Syrians. So it's ongoing civil wars and recurring conflicts. Second part is really Lebanon. One of the main challenges, the political fragmentation and sectarian divisions. So in Lebanon, we have 18 different religious communities. So imagine all the sectarians playing their role. And with those 18 sectarian communities, we have around 12 to 14 political fragmentation. So here it says a lot that the civil rights are not as much as present as the sectarians and political rights. And definitely people feel the belonging to a religion and to politics more than the belonging to the nationality of Lebanon. So this is a main challenge. Definitely always the economical and social inequalities. And really after, before COVID, we had the revolution. And here when we had the economical crisis, that the dollar went double prices. So people were barely living. And definitely Lebanon is known, but with the refugees from the Syrian to Palestinian communities. Honestly, we are around 4 million, but 2.5 million are refugees in Lebanon. So imagine the challenge that between the communities, local communities, and also the refugees in order to feel the belonging. And definitely the challenge for building the trust, because when you have half Lebanese and half refugees. So when we are talking about dialogue and peace building, trust is very well needed among the sectarian, the 18 religious communities, but also among the Lebanese themselves and the Lebanese and the refugees living in Lebanon. So the peace building in Lebanon. And here, when we say when we have war, and always we are in a post-war, definitely the emphasizes on reconciliation and coexistence. And when I say coexistence, it's not like we are living together, but how are we living together? How are we respecting each other's differences without creating conflict? And when we have war, did we really build a reconciliation? Honestly and unfortunately, still we are in phases of finding truth before finding the reconciliation. The second part is the grassroots peace initiatives. And here I think one of the pillars in Lebanon are the NGOs and the CEOs and the faith-based organization that we can do a difference and make at least, because we don't believe in the government nor in the civil rights. So here it comes the NGOs and CEOs to play their role in order to foster in the dialogue and the peace building. The third component is really the local mediation and community dialogue practices. And I think Lebanon is very well known by those individual community dialogue approaches and practices more than the structural level. But I think at least those small initiatives are building a difference in the perspective on the individual mindset. And here, when we see the difference in the new generation when it comes to peace building and dialogue, and focus on preventing the escalation, then resolving at the national elite level. And I know it's debatable, but when the structural level is really governed by the regional level, by the international level, we start to think, okay, we are not being able to change the laws and the regulation. And I will give a practical example. In Lebanon, the president should be Christian Maronite. The prime minister should be, despite the skills, despite the capacities and the qualification, the prime minister should be a Sunnite. The head of deputies should be a Shiite. So here imagine all the conflict that they are creating among the system. So in order to address this, we said that we can maybe change the mindset of people, that it's not related to religion nor to the political parties that you are in. It's really the human being in itself and the skillful thingy. And still till up till now, we are not changing in the system. So the election system still the same. So also it creates conflict in itself. So what type of strategy are we using to minimize the violence? And definitely, and here before going to this, because sometimes we are taking this for granted, promoting dialogue instead of confrontation. Because here the culture, it's like action reaction without really creating a safe space for people to communicate and to dialogue. So I'm not like you. I'm not Shiite, I'm not Christian, I'm not Sunni. So we are not being able to create a space where people, yeah, we are diverse people, but how we can find a common ground to live together. And this, I think, what we are trying to work on. And definitely training in conflict resolution and mediation, because we are not taking this for granted. And now if I can ask how many times you eat per day, you will tell me 2, 3, 4 times. How many times you brush your teeth? You will tell me 2, 3 times. How many times you use transportation per day? We say 3, 4 times and we do it perfectly. But when we ask people, how many times you face conflict per day? And they are blocked because it's something that we cannot talk about, or it's forbidden to talk about, or it's something that, no, we don't have conflict. So at least to break this and to say that conflict is something normal, that we face it on our daily life. But how are we addressing it? This is the difference. And definitely here it comes the role of empowering youth and women as peace advocates. Because in Lebanon, I can say the role of women are really not like other Arab countries. They are really empowered, but in a way, how we can promote their role and the youth, because youth also, they are leaving Lebanon for good because they don't believe in that country again. How we can, those two target group, empower them in order to stay and build the future of Lebanon. And here it comes, I think, the role of also the key of this webinar, how we can use the art, culture, and education as tool for non-violent expression. And this works perfectly because we believe art, sports, and culture are indirect ways in order to address conflict and peace building. So, and definitely the social media, how we can address hate speech and misinformation, because Lebanon is built on rumors and social media. So if you really want to spread something, do it. And I know it's everywhere, but here we emphasize a lot on this. So how we can minimize those hatred speech and misinformation. And how are we doing this nonviolent strategy? By using participatory approach. And when I say participatory approach, it's really community-driven solutions. So not the top-down policies. I worked in GIZ and we never used that. We have this and you have to apply for this grant in order to fund your organization. No, our approach is really to become inclusive, to see what are the needs of the communities in order to build together a proper approach and strategy. So engaging local leaders and religious figures and civil society is a key, because in order not to let them be our opponents, in contrary, our allies, in order to promote peace in our community. And the participatory workshop, the town halls, the dialogue circuit. So many here, I'm giving some examples in order to let people engage as much as possible in order to feel that this is our project. So we are doing something in order to make our life better in the circumstances that we have. We are not denying the resources and the circumstances that we have. And definitely when we build this ownership and this accountability within the community, that it becomes their project. And this is the purpose of it, that we are the leaders and we are promoting this culture of peace and nonviolent communication. And definitely, and this is very challenging, how we include the marginalized groups from the youth, the refugees, and definitely when it comes to Palestinian and Syrian, because the hatred speech is not only among the Lebanese, but also between the generations and also between the communities and the refugees themselves. So we always try to balance, to have diverse group from refugees, from youth, from women, from local communities as well. So here's some practical case examples in Lebanon in order to see some perspective. So here we have really a very well-known organization. It's Forum for Development and Cultural Dialogue and Interfaith Dialogue. So here they really work a lot on to bring those 18 different communities to see the diverse and the differences, but they took it, the diversity is a source of richness, not a source of conflict. So how we can really develop this in order to through this interface dialogue. And what I really found interesting, that they took this religious in order to make a common ground to work together. Definitely, we have I'm giving example here as diverse tools used in order to address peace building and conflict. Documentation, really, they are great in documenting and doing researches when it comes to conflict and reconciliation and really healing. So they took really part of history about healing processes and reconciliation, and how also documentation and memory is an essential key when it comes to peace building and conflict. Definitely, we have many youth-led initiatives from clubs, student unions, arts, because we use a lot of arts in order to address conflict as part of healing processes. And we have the local peace committees in mixed communities. And here, when I say not only in Beirut, the capital, but definitely in the huge north, south of Lebanon, that they are really doing a huge work when it comes to different religious communities. And definitely, we have the international support from the NDP to GIZ, all related to Peace Building Fund and other really big donors. And they are supporting not only the local NGOs, but also the government in order to build those bridges among the structural level, but also the grassroots level. And I will talk last but not least about the board game that I have created. And really, it was a youth-led initiative for 1 year. And they were from different backgrounds, from different religious, economic, and cultural background, and also refugees. So we have created this board game, and we called it in Arabic تعالوا نحكي, or let's talk. And I think the core of this board game is to have real conflict scenarios. So we went to communities and we took real life scenarios, but we only changed the names, and we did all the research, and people themselves, they did their own research into their own conflict. Because here we believe when they research the other conflicting party, we are trying to create a dialogue in an indirect way. Because in those you have the board game, that definitely we know Monopoly. Monopoly, the currency is the money. Here, the currency is time. So in order to win, you have to build a good relationship, so to increase your relationship with your conflicting party and to reach your objectives. And I think they are two keys in order to have a conflict transformation or peace building initiative. So they play with those real life scenarios, and they chase the dice and they do all this. So you have here the 4 colors, so 4 players playing one scenario. You have here the negotiation. So when they are here, they have to negotiate their conflict. When they are here, they get time in order to take it when they are negotiating, because here they have only 1 minute, but when they gain time, they can win more time in order to negotiate. Here they have tips, and tips about the other party in conflict. So because we know in conflict that we know it all, no. But we have some tips that we don't know about the other, that they are helpful in addressing our conflict. And here the perspective. And in this case, in this square, they need to say their perspective about the other conflicting party. And the other conflicting party cannot say a word. He or she should listen to what the other are saying when it comes to perspective, because we know when we are talking about conflict, it's all related to perspectives. And definitely, I think what I like here it's the negotiation when all the 4 conflicting parties negotiate their conflict. But what I like in here, it's called it pay it or play it, because in conflict, So if they don't want to make a dialogue or to communicate together, they will pay time. And I love it because here when you see the real conflict, because people, they don't want to communicate. And definitely in order to make the conflict at least move forward, we need to contribute. So if you are not willing to contribute, you have to pay money. So here you pay time. So we take from their time in order, or they should contribute to make the conflict easier. So, and also we have the audience, because in conflict, the audience play a role. Our mom, our friend, our neighborhood. So here they have the chance to ask the audience, who are the other players and also other people in the room, what do they think and what type of advice they can give them in order to address their conflict. So we found really this board game. And here when I'm saying about objectives and relationship, so they need to move their dice and their pound, sorry, in order to reach the objective and relationship. So really here I talked about the reason behind why we have created this board game, because conflict is not something we learn how to deal with. Unfortunately, we learn how to eat, how to behave, how to sleep, but we never learned how really to address conflict. We don't have the tools. So this is an indirect tool really that in a fun way, but yet so deep, people can address their conflict. It's not something we want to think or to talk about. So no, I'm fine. I don't have conflict. So it's also an indirect way to talk about it. And definitely due to the diverse components in Lebanon, the 18 religious communities and different refugees. So we thought it's a way that people can communicate together. So here also some of really the youth, what they said. I forgot that I'm playing. I really lived the role and want to know how it ended. And we live with conflict. We used to be afraid of dealing with it. Now I have the courage to deal and address it. And also they said that I can use the board game elements to solve my conflict. And this is the purpose of the board game. I didn't know that we can have so many audience in our conflict. Now I'm more aware. So really those highlights moments that you trigger the reflection on those audience. And here when we played, because we have played in many countries, in Iraq, in Palestine, in Jordan, Afghanistan, Lebanon, and definitely in European countries. So we won an award in two main international tool fair in Italy and in Croatia as the board game a tool for addressing conflict. And to say before this, now I'm working on, I'm finalizing to make this board game a university course, so they can use it, the university, as an interactive approach when it comes to peace building and conflict. So really,
Can I just 2 more minutes, if that's okay? Can you finish in 2 minutes? Yeah.
And
great. Thank you.
And how is the impacts on Lebanese communities? Really, we feel that we are making a bit of a slightly difference in social cohesion, that at least the youth, they are being able to communicate more than saying, no, you are different than me. Reducing as much as we can the intergroup mistrust, and also promoting inclusive decision making. And I think this is very, very important in order to enhancing the resilience when it comes against political manipulation and sectarian and conflict, at least on grassroots level. So the last one, the key lessons learned. Peace building really must be localized. So not only all these international approaches and the international theoretical, how we can make it contextualized and related to the people needs. And non-violence is a really continuous education and practice. It's not like a magic stick. I did it and it's done. No, it's a continuous work on ourselves and on other people, and the collaboration across divides. Because really, here when it comes that despite the divides, what it is, religious, political, or generation, it is essential. And finally, empowering communities to create their sustainable impact, because when they have this ownership, here when we can talk about sustainable development. And honestly, this what we are thinking to scale up the participatory models to all regions in Lebanon, to foster partnership between the state, NGOs, and communities, and also to invest in youth and education for peace and long-term commitment for non-violent political, cultural background. So that's it. And I will end it that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of understanding those diversity and justice. That's it. Thank you. And really, thank you for listening. I don't know if you have any questions more, then I will stop sharing. So at least I can.
That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Justine. Thank you so much for
Welcome.
such a rich presentation. Can I invite Henry and Manuve back onto the screen? We have a few minutes and we have had a few questions coming in. So and Manuve has very kindly, he's written some answers to the questions, so I will be able to read the answers out. So we'll start with a question that came in, actually, Manuve, when you were speaking. Somebody said, thank you for sharing your impressive work. So courageous, so powerful. And the question was, did you experience any conflicts during the meetings around the exhibition, and how did you handle them? And you have very kindly supplied me with the answer. And you said this, that the tensions were really high, especially in the Pokot, Baringo, and Samburu, in those northern pastoral regions of Kenya. Cattle rustling was particularly high at the time of the exhibition going round. So you needed to get security to be able to move round safely. And at some point during the inter-community meeting in Baringo, you had to go, you could only do it working alongside the local NGOs. It was only because the local NGOs gave security, provided security, that you were able to continue to have these spaces of dialogue and to have these meetings. You also write that to avoid conflict during the meetings, there was a process that you undertook, which was a very important signal of reconciliation, which was that a bull was slaughtered together. The young men themselves, the community themselves were involved in this together as a way of providing food and also of signalling that this was absolutely a shared cultural space, because this was something that would happen at a community level. And whilst they were doing that, whilst the young men were involved in that process, in that sort of that procedure, they were chatting. They were talking, and this simple kind of activity together, you notice that tension began to lower, because we call this working trust, actually, don't we, when we're thinking about models of trust. Often, if you can find a common task that brings people together, trust will automatically be fostered. It's much more likely to be fostered because of those conditions. And another question that Manuve has answered, how did you choose the stories? What did you avoid including? What he's answered is this: the travelling exhibition acted as a generative theme for facilitating discussions. So when people viewed the exhibition, they created their own discussions, their own stories and thoughts kind of came up naturally, spontaneously, using the exhibition as a stimulus. So there weren't necessarily stories that were being presented, it was more the artifacts as a way of sparking conversation and dialogue. That sense of, I remember witnessing this myself, you know, people looking at some very intricate beadwork from one particular community and saying, oh, we do that. What does it mean in, you know, in our community, this color means this, what does it mean in your, and finding those stories and then talking about how the beading was such an important part of daily life and an expression. And you also say that you avoided mentioning local conflict. You deliberately avoided doing that because you wanted to really create a container and create guidelines, you know, so that people were respecting those guidelines. It's like, we are not going to be talking about any of the specifics that are beyond this. And people had to agree to that to come into the space. So I hope I've represented you okay there, Manuve. Thank you. Justine, we have a question for you as well. The question came in: what kind of conflict can be addressed in the board game? What kind of conflicts does it talk?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I summarized the board game really in 1 minute. We have 5 types of conflicts. So one related to gender. And when I say gender, really, it's a family that they have a fight between the son and the sister, because the son can go to the university and the daughter no, because it's in Beirut. So it's the real conflict. So gender. We have local, between the refugees and the local communities, so Syrian and Lebanese. We have an international one, we thought, between 2 flatmates living together, and really how they can live and they couldn't. So also it was a real one, but this, when we played it internationally. We have one related to the education. So the system, education, and the youth as well. And the last one is related between the generations, so between parents and kids. So and honestly, for example, when we played it in Malta, we went with the board game and we have created their own conflict. So in order to play it and contextualize it. So also one of the objective is really to play it according to the context that we are in, and they have created their own conflict.
Amazing. So creative. Thank you, Jess. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Henry, you welcome. But last but not least, how does this all, what you've heard this morning, how does it kind of weave in to the SDGs sort of more broadly? Is there anything that's inspired you or made you curious in terms of what you've heard?
I mean, I think what I heard from the two, from Manuve and from Justine, is 2 different but very practical ways in which museums and culture and education and participatory activity can contribute to, let's say, addressing local challenges, conflicts. And in Manuve's case, what I heard was about I know that there's the temporary exhibition, but the temporary exhibition, the touring exhibition, it's built around an idea. It's built around an invitation. So the invitation is like, here's a fairly abstract idea about the journeys of peace. Okay, what does that mean? so then people will bring themselves to it about what does that mean to what does it mean to me? What does it mean to you? What does it mean to us? It's open enough that it invites creativity from people. You know, people bring themselves to it, and that's wonderful. And I think in the same way, in a similar way, like Justine talked very about many fantastic things, and like the game is like a practical tool, but it gives people a kind of like a template, but the way that the template is populated by the people, by their world, by their reality, by their challenges, by their aspirations. But I think what I heard from both of Manuve and Justine is that we go into this work with the right spirit. We don't go into it with the answer. That doesn't work.
Exactly.
But we don't go into it with the answer, or we don't try to impose our idea of what the outcome should be. But we create the kind of the place for it, people can explore it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I do think, you know, thinking about how museums and libraries can contribute to this kind of work is like they're a bit like a step out of the day-to-day. So they can be a place where people can try out these ideas in a kind of consequence-free way. You know, they're not just in their day-to-day. It's to just, all of these are tools that enable us to explore the idea that things might be different.
Yeah.
And in order for them to be different, we might just need to change the way that we think about them as well. So I was very inspired by both our speakers. So thank you.
Thanks, Henry. Thanks so much. That's wonderful, wonderful. Well, we are out of time pretty much. So I am going to, if Inga is going to come in and just give us a few words to close. But can I just say a deep, heartfelt thanks to all of you who've participated in the webinar today, for your wisdom, for your insight, your creativity, your humility, and the work that you are doing, which is touching people's lives. It's changing communities. We are so inspired. Thank you for being here. It's been wonderful to have you. Inga, would you like to come back and just close us off?
Sure, I can only add my thank you to our two great guest speakers. You don't know, but you know, all chats are boiling, the Latvian Museum and Library chats, and people are really amazed and moved by your courage, by your very strategic and very persistent work. Really, thank you so much for sharing. And I think what is surprising that despite our countries are so far from each other, these inner tensions and experience of conflict seem to be so similar. Maybe it's
Exactly.
just human, how we experience it and how we face it, and the strategies can also be shared. So really, thank you. There was even an idea of possibly translating the board game, if it's possible, localizing
We
it.
haven't, yeah, we have, if in Latvian, definitely I would be more than happy. We have it in English and in Arabic. And we are translating it in French, to French. So, yeah, but at least you have it in English. So we are more than happy to really have further step regarding to contextualize it and translate it to Latvian. Definitely more than happy.
Thank you for your openness, and I believe we can keep in touch and follow
Yeah,
each
sure.
other's work too. And thank you, Manuve, too. For us, it's really a great courage and endeavor that you are showing. It's truly inspiring, and we can relate to similar conflicts inside our communities and look at the methods that you had chosen to address those. Yeah, thank you so much. And we have only one webinar left in this series, and we will continue with Diana on the 4th of November. And that one will be dedicated to the theme of navigating peace building in times of conflict. And we will speak of language, the power of language and communication that can be both barriers and gateways. I think a very important and very sensitive and sometimes difficult to grasp topic, and we'll be happy to explore it together with Diana. Looking forward to seeing you all at the next webinar, and yeah, have the peaceful rest of your day.
Thank you, and for you too. Bye.
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 Bye. Bye.